Good morning, friends and neighbors. We're back. Another 9:05 stream this morning on this lovely Thursday. A couple quick announcements. I think I mentioned this yesterday, but I'm gonna clarify a little bit today. Just popped my earbud out. I'm making some changes to my scheduling on this stuff. What's gonna happen is starting next week, I'm gonna be doing a live stream on Friday morning, and I was debating with myself yesterday about whether to do it on Wednesday or not. I was thinking about going to Wednesday and Friday, but I think next week the only live stream will be on Friday morning. There should be various drops, video drops around the same time of morning throughout the week. So we're talking about video releases Monday through Thursday at 9:05, and I'll be on Discord at that time. So if you want to talk and ask questions about those videos, you can. And you can also interact with me on any of the normal social haunts over those kind of videos with questions and things you have, or obviously you can comment on the videos themselves. But I am going to go to doing a live stream only once a week. Because there's numerous factors around it that are just kind of time consuming, honestly, out of my days. And right now I have a lot of production stuff going on. Daily live streams may come back at some point, but right now I just have been looking at my scheduling, and I have got a bunch of stuff that I have to get done over the next month or so. So I'm going to dial the live streams back to just Fridays with clip drops during the week, and that may end up being better anyway, because if I do a stream on a Friday and then over the weekend I look back at that stream and see what all was in it, odds are that stream is going to yield a lot of moments that'll make nice tight clips, so that instead of folks having to wade through 1, sometimes 2 hours of my rambling while I'm working, I can give you guys, much more focused clips on things that'll be far more useful. So I think that'll work out better for me and everyone else. If anyone has any thoughts or comments on it, though, please let me know. Pop those in the chat or the comments below this video once it's rewatchable. So that's the plan right now. Live streams on Fridays with clips and things dropped during the week. So that said, I'm going to pop over and see. I had some folks in Discord say they might be kind of late showing up to the chat today, so that's fine. We're going to go ahead and jump over to Daz Studio and do a quick review. I went ahead and finished up my Basilisk off camera. And so here we can see the final piece. Of course, that's just viewport display. Let's turn on some iRay and then go get ourselves one of my background presets, background and HDRI presets. And all of these presets I have right here, even though I've made nice little thumbnails for myself for them, just cause. These are all taken from HDRIs that you can download from HDRI Haven. I've labeled them as such here. So let's use this one. I like this HDRI. It's got a really warm light to it. Okay. Oh, over in the chat, I see Heinze. Reggie is here. Sean is here. Cool. Thanks, guys. Glad to see y'all come over. So let's take a quick look at some of the little things that we've worked in here. So let's zoom out on this guy just a little bit. So we added in nice controls for the tail. We also have Controls across all the hands, which are accessible right here, or you can click on this group. And if you have in your preferences, okay, in your parameters in DAZ Studio, if you go to preferences and you have Consolidate Properties turned on, I keep this on. I love to use this. This way I can have all of these things here that have the same name, roughly this, they have the same effect across all those different hands. But then if I wanted to, for some reason, use a grasp on all of them, I can go here and you can see how it works. Okay. Or we can just go to single hand that way. So I like that quite a bit. I'm very happy with where that came out. Let's see, on the head, we have some controls for the side to side on the eyes. Up and down on the eyes. You also notice too that if you recall, the display of this guy in the viewport, the eyes came out kind of clouded over red. That's because the viewport display in DAZ Studio is going to show, I believe it's the translucency color I've chosen on the eyes in their material setup. There is more to the materials on this guy than just his maps. And so that's why the eyes show up that way in the viewport. But when you turn on eye ray, which is what it's meant for, you'll see how they work. They pick up reflections really nicely, and you get all that great effect out of those. So I've also added a set of controls for the head and neck. And then on the jaw, we have that. There's also morphs. And you'll notice there are things labeled pose controls, and then you'll find a thing that says actor. Anything under actor typically is a shape, whereas anything under pose controls is typically moving joints or doing something other than direct vertex manipulation. This is actually a good moment to kind of get into that for those who don't know, just a quick description of it. So a lot of times, because users are just used to using these sliders, they think of everything, they'll call everything a morph. They'll say, oh, how's the arm morph? Is that bend morph okay? It's kind of incorrect. Like, I get why they would land on that, because they just have everything there as sliders. So to the average user, all of those just look the same. Sure, some of them have some colors, or maybe have a little icon or whatever, but they're generally the same. But there's a real difference, a very important difference in understanding what's going on between morphs versus rotations, and what pose controls are versus things that you'll see typically under the actor heading in DAZ Studio. Things that are labeled actor are typically vertex manipulations, okay? What that means is the mesh itself has been taken into something like Zbrush and then sculpted, and then the trajectory of those vertices, the final stop of those vertices after they've been moved in the sculpting process, is sent back over to the program and stored there as a morph. And what that means is that DAZ Studio then has this data there that says move vertex 1 from point 0, 0, 0, XY 0, 0, 0, XYZ 0, 0, 0 to point 1, 1, 1, right? And it'll move that vertex to that location in its local space, inside the space of the mesh. But now if that vertex moves to that location and then the joint it is weighted to rotates, it will still move in space. So that's one of the reasons why in past streams I've talked about really understanding the relationship between object space, world space, and UV space. Okay, so what happens with morphs is the vertices are moved in the local or object space. With rotations, joints, the vertices are moved in world space. So the local space is unaffected. So if I grab, say, the head right here, and I rotate this, I use the bend to rotate this. Well, those rotations are happening based on the joint. But if I were to go into the actor here and let's say dial up my blink, okay, that blink is moving the vertices of those eyelids in object space. So no matter where the whole thing rotates to, those are still moving in that trajectory locally. They don't care about where the head is rotated to in the world. All that movement cares about is that local space. So think of it as if, think of the joint as being like a box, okay? And let's say you have a cup in that box, and you have or even better, let's say you have a metal cup and a magnet, because the magnet will stick anywhere inside the cup, okay? You think of the cup as being the joint, and then that magnet as being a vertex inside that, okay? You could stick that vertex anywhere inside that cup, but then you could move the cup anywhere, okay? That vertex is still going to stay wherever you put it inside that cup. So that vertex or that magnet in the analog I'm creating here, that magnet doesn't care about the space outside that cup. It only cares where it's stuck to inside the cup. Then you move the cup in world space. The cup, wherever it travels to, the magnet still goes because it's stuck to that cup. It's part of that cup. So hopefully that's a good way of explaining the difference between object space, world space, morphs, and rotations, and what those entail. So when we have pose controls, I think my pen died already. Oh, great, thanks. When we have, let's just, thanks, Wacom, thanks. Okay, there we go. So when we have pose controls in DAZ Studio, typically these are where we have combined together different rotations and to get a specific effect. Like for instance, this look side to side affects both the head and neck, and it's affecting the y-axis of those and rotating those side to side. That's going to, but that is joint level rotation. That is something that's rotating the joints in world space. We can even think too of there being other layers of space. Like once you get your head around object space versus world space, you start to realize that we can nest things. So let's say if a vertex is at the lowest level of space, technically a UV would be kind of the lowest level of space because that's where it's at in 2 dimensions, but that gets into some, deeper descriptions. If a vertex is at, kind of your lowest level of 3D space, that's inside the object space. Then the object, like in in the cup example I gave, okay, that cup sits in world space. We move the cup. I was using a magnet in a metal cup. The magnet's going to follow the cup wherever the cup goes, and the cup's going to go in world space. Well, then if we took a box and we placed the cup inside the box, okay, well, anywhere we move the cup inside the box, that's where the cup moves inside the box's local space, the box's object space. So at that point, the cup is then nested inside the box. So in the course of a figure, in rigging figures, we have the overall figure. And if we go to our hierarchy here, you can see this labeled Basilisk is the root node. That is the master of everything downstream. That is the deepest point of that hierarchy. Or actually, it's the most external point of the hierarchy, meaning this is the container that everything sits inside of, okay? So then from there, we have a hierarchical system where we can see all these joints, and if we come over here, we can arrow down, and you'll see it's selecting through them. Okay, and those joints are what I was talking about in object space. So those joints move vertices, but the joints also follow the root of the figure. So you have vertices that are in local space or object space. Then these objects are really, they're not in the space of these joints here because they're weighted with skin weights. So that's a different sort of thing, but it relates. Think of the objects as being in the space of that we've defined with these joints. And then each of these joints has a parent, okay? Has a container that it sits inside of. So the head sits inside the neck, which sits inside the chest, which sits inside the abdomen, sits inside the hip, and the hip sits inside the master container of the basilisk. Okay? So our root node, so if we posed any of this, and then we moved that root node, the pose is going to stay the same, but it's all going to follow the root node because it's all nested inside of it. So we've gone from object space to object space to object space, basically climbing this hierarchy of different spaces, this nesting, all the way to our root right here. So this is a set of concepts that I don't hear talked about that often in tutorials in 3D. And I think it's super, super important because a lot of concepts in 3D rely on the use of these, the relationships between these things and how they interact. So understanding that at a deep level will really help the way you work in 3D. It will help your understanding of modeling. It'll help your understanding of the relationships between models in a scene. It helps with the way you approach rigging. It's just such an important fundamental concept to get your head around. And I don't see near enough material out there that deals with these basic fundamental concepts of 3D. So anyway, that's kind of something I've had in the back of my mind for a while and knew at some point I would find an appropriate time to kind of jump on it. So we kind of went off on a tangent with that, but you know, like I was saying, it might actually make for some good clips. So anyway, that's my little sidebar into that. I'm just gonna have to quit using my pen this morning until the stream is over because Wacom decided to just bomb on me. Oh look, Wacom. You can't see this on the stream, but they're just got a notice of a Wacom driver update. Thanks, guys. So, anyway, there's that. Let's continue our little walkthrough on this guy. Okay. So, coming back around. Obviously, we have the jaw opening and closing. Okay. And here's a good example of what I was talking about as I show these. We have these morphs for the tongue. It's like there's tongue up, but since the tongue is rooted to the jawbone, that means the morph will work wherever the jaw is because the morph and the rotation are not, the rotation doesn't, the morph follows with the rotation because it's in, you know, it's a morph. That's the way they work. So, wonder who keeps beeping me. I'm getting notifications from somewhere and I'm gonna have to cut around those eventually. So, let's see. We have some other little things. I like having the jaw able to twist and go side to side a little bit because if you wanted to animate a chewing motion, that's really good. Also in the head, you'll see there's tongue up. There's separate tongue up and tongue down, but then here I have them linked. So that's just a little extra that I like to throw in there. And then for tongue side to side, and boop. I like that. I like that quite a bit. All right. Now, the spikes and armor are on by default. I've saved them that way because that's really the intended final look. But if you guys recall, there was one morning where we were working with those, and I separated them out so that we could turn them on or off individually. So here we have the master controller for those that turns all of that off. And if we want, we can turn the HD shaping off, which is going to smooth them out quite a bit. Oh, I think I have that set. Locked or what? Oh, there it goes. Okay, I just wasn't grabbing it. So if we wanted, we can smooth him out and get this really, just a different look for him. I'm actually tempted to do some skins for it, some materials and textures for it that play to this and have some different kinds of, some different variations on it. Because just as it stands, this makes a nice chassis for doing other morphs. We could do other HD shapes, and then take those HD shapes into Substance and have them drive new texture sets. There's so much you could do with that. And that might be something that I use this guy as a sample of in some other videos because, I don't know, it's just kind of a cool thing to get into. It's an interesting way to just have one piece of content grow into so much other content. So let's turn our HD shape back up, and I'm going to go back into the spikes and armor here. And with my spikes and armor actually, if I just restore the figure, one of the things I can do, you'll see that this drives all of these other spike and armor parameters up to 100%. So if I want to remove any of these, let's say I want to remove them from the head, then I can just manually go over here and do that. So there we have, the spikes are gone from the head. And I have a kit that I've begun working on that'll be an add-on for him that's going to have him pulling a little cart two-wheeled chariot sort of deal. So for that, I'm going to have to get rid of the spikes around like the shoulders and chest area. So we would turn these off, and also it will get rid of those around the hip. And that's going to allow me to place things over those areas and still be able to have spikes pop up between them and so on. So that was the whole purpose of doing that. So take a quick look, just get a little posing going on him. I've gone through and created some, actually a bunch of JCMs on this guy. And really, really happy with the way that he's turned out. Just going to go around and select all the feet, then get my translate tool and hit my space bar so that those are all pinned. And then from here, you'll see, we can move different joints, rotate some things, and they'll pose really, really easily. And I really like using this, these head and neck controls here. And on the tail, swing this guy around. Just go into the actor on here, the head. Actually, no, we want to go to the mouth right here. Open his mouth a little bit. A little twist, so it's got a little attitude to it. Hey guys. And yes, most of us who do this, I swear to God, most of us who do this are creating creatures and animals and stuff like that and animating them. We talk to ourselves all day long. We'll sit and make little voices up for these things while we're doing them. We'll be like, hello. We'll sit and do dumb crap like that all the time because it's fun. It's fun. Why not? So, let's see. So here's tongue side to side, and he's like, "Yo." And I think I had here's, let's see, eyes wide, like that. So yeah, that's a quick look inside this guy, kind of reviewing. Um, I've worked on this guy off and on, for a number of days in the mornings on the streams here, and I feel pretty good with it. Uh, when posing things, I do tend to really use the IK and pinning quite a bit. Big fan of that. While I'm in here, I'll show you another quick tip on posing. I have a key command set for selecting everything downstream. If you haven't set one of those up, we can do that by, like, if we go into our scene selection, you can see that there's a command here. It says select, and then in there you can get select children. So if we hit, I believe, F3, and we can go down to, let's see, is it scene view? Yes, go down to scene view. This is where you can set custom key commands in Manga Studio. And so right here, I have select children set to Control-Alt-C. And you just right-click that and hit change keyboard shortcut. And then it'll prompt you to enter in your shortcut. So you just hit whatever key command you want to be associated with that. And if you hit a key command that's already associated with something, it will prompt you as to whether or not you want to overwrite the previous association, which most of the time I would recommend not, because it'll make it very difficult to follow any tutorials that you want to follow that might use key commands. So this is my select children key command. I use Control-Alt-C. And if you don't want to use that, you can always come over and Control-click or Shift-click down in the Scene tab to select different joints. But then once you have those selected, you can use the little rotation tool up here, and that will actually rotate all the selected joints at once. And I use that all the time when doing poses. It's such a natural way to puppet your figure. I'm very, very fond of that. So there, we just rotated some of those joints. Let's move that foot. Now maybe take this foot, move it back a bit. And even though I didn't set out for this to be a posing tutorial, this is actually a decent little pose for this guy. And as he needs some poses, I'm going to go ahead and save this. So let's go to the folder I've made for that, and we'll just go in here and I'm going to save a pose preset. I'm going to call this Basilisk 01. And remember how I was describing the whole thing about the relationship between vertices and objects and everything from, like, the object space to the world space, and object space to parent space to world space, hierarchical space, all those sorts of things. Well, when we save out poses, most of the time we don't want to have that root data in there with it. In this case, I do want some root data because that's where these pose controls I'm using are. But I don't want the translational data, transforms, the translation, rotation, scale. So before I click accept, I'm going to go down right in here. So if we open this up, I'm going to go down to general, transforms, translation, and we'll just turn all of those off, but I'm going to leave all my pose controls on. That way, any of the different posing that I've done with those pose controls will be able to stay intact inside my saved pose. So I'm going to hit accept. And this is also a bit of testing on my part because I want to make sure that all those controls have the proper display set on them. There's a point in DAZ Studio where we go to a part of a figure, go into the pose controls here, and look at any controls that I've made. And when we've created those, like if we go to edit mode and create a new property, in here you'll see there is presentation attributes, and at the top of that is type. Okay, and you think presentation, this is like how it's being presented. And when I first started using DAZ Studio a long time ago, this presentation attributes I found really confusing the way it's labeled, because to me that's how is it presented to me? How is it presented to the user? That's sort of what it is. But more importantly, at least this is how I think of it, it's how that attribute is presented to the program. And that is a huge thing. There's a huge difference in how it's presented to you, the user, versus how it's presented to the program. We can present all kinds of things to you, the user, label them, do all kinds of stuff, but how the program sees it is really important. So when we make this selection, we're telling it how the program will see it. And we have all these different options in here. And most of the time, your choices are going to be between like pose, corrective, or shape. Typically pose or shape. Something that is a shape is a morph. It's vertices moving in local space. Something that's a pose denotes that this new property is driving things. It's driving rotations. It can also drive morphs and things like that, but we're telling the program to look at it as though it were one of these pose controls, not necessarily a morph. And if it's labeled as a pose control, then when you save a pose, you have the option of saving that setting with the pose. That's why that's really important. There's also some trickery we can pull sometimes. If I have a morph that I want saved with a pose, since the pose save dialog doesn't allow us to select morphs, what I might do is temporarily change a morph over to being a pose type by right-clicking on its attribute, like right here, and right here, and changing this from shape to pose. Excuse me. I might change that from shape to pose, and then save my pose so that is saved with it. Then make sure that I don't save the figure out that way. That way I don't corrupt what I have there. But what happens though is if it's labeled that way, then when that is saved, it will know to save that parameter into the duff file that it creates. So there's some neat little bits of trickery you can get into with that. So now that we've saved this pose, let's restore the figure and I'm going to test it. And there it is. Works just fine. Exactly as intended. So the only thing I can think of from what I see here that I have missed, and this is also a good thing to show, is I would like to have all of these morphs that are on the head, that affect vertices of the head, to be found on the head. By default, morphs are applied at the body level because they apply to the entire mesh. So let's go ahead and open our property hierarchy here. Okay. And then I'm going to drill down under bones and find the head right here. And then we're going to take our, let's see, everything, all of these controls, all of these things that are under head, we're going to drag those and drop them right here. And it will ask if I'd like to create aliases of those. So we're going to create those aliases there. And then if I have anything here in the pose controls that affect the head, I'm going to hold shift and select these, then come down here and select all of these. I'm also going to drag and drop those onto the head to create aliases there. So now you'll see all of that is repeated on the head. So if I'm posing the figure and I grab any of this, I can operate on that from the head. Or if I double click on the body, you'll see it's rippled through there because it's an instance of those things. So I'm going to save this figure now. And that's going to call the Basilisk done. So let's just go in here, save it. And there we go. So that figure is completed. I'm going to pop over into the chat now and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Also, I see Gina popped in. Hey, Gina, how's it going? Let's see. I'm skimming back through the chat real quick. Gina, why is Zbrush a jerk? Anyone? Yeah, that's funny. Reggie says learning the correct wording is important to me because I really don't know that at all. I find I'm often surprised how many folks who are working in 3D do not understand these basic concepts, the things that I think of as basic. And I'm not trying to be insulting to anybody with that, but like where I come at this stuff, like my first 3D model was made in a spreadsheet. It was literally plugging in the actual coordinates in 3D space that a vertex was going to lay at. So like coming at it from that early stage in the art form's development, I kind of have an implicit understanding of those things. But I really feel like if you look at, object space, world space, look at the hierarchical spacing and how everything's nested, everything is inside everything else, and understanding that, and knowing how to talk about that, because the comment from Reggie was about the correct wording. Learning the language of that is really important to being able to understand what's going on there, and it gives you a way to communicate it. I've had many conversations with artists that I've brought in on projects and things through the years who were great artists, but they didn't have this fundamental communication ability. And once they heard these things, a lot of stuff clicked into place, and it actually made them better artists because they were able to then they had these concepts in mind that they were interacting with, but they didn't know what they were interacting with, really. Like not consciously. They did it kind of instinctually. And then once they had the words, they had, think of the words as being containers. They had the containers to put the concepts in, and they could relate these things to each other. And all of a sudden, their understanding of things got much stronger. Let's see. I could probably do that sometime. Yeah. For those who don't know, in case you didn't hear, my significant other, Janice, is here. My fiance, Janice. Yes, we gonna be tying a knot. Is off camera here, and she said, asked if maybe sometime I could do a glossary or something like that of those kind of things. And that's actually a really good idea. That's something I may sit down and think about sometime and write out and just do a quick video on that, because that's really handy. Let's see. I'm just scrolling back through the chat. Is my camera frozen, you guys? All right, well, let's just kill that. Oh, yeah, camera froze. All right, that's fine. I'll just see, is the tripod camera working? No. Oh, yeah, that stuff probably died with my Wacom driver there. Yep. Fun, fun, fun. All right. I'm going to pause this for a second and restart it. All right. I'll be continuing this without my my funky face on screen, since that Wacom driver died, and that's where my cameras are plugging in through the USBs on that. I'll end up having to restart my machine after this, so I apologize, you guys. Let's see. Anything else in the chat? Oh, Reggie asks, how did I pin the feet? So what you do there, Reg, is if you have your pointer tool, or you can use your translate tool to select. I have a tendency to use my pointer tool. It's Alt-Shift-V to make my selections. And if you hold Control, you can select multiple objects. So here I'm selecting the feet. And then I'll get my translate tool, which is Alt-Shift-T. And if you hit your space bar, it will turn on and off the pinning on those. Okay. All right, camera's back. Good, 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 good. There we go. All right, just a quick camera check there, you guys. So that's how you do that pinning. And we can pin anything, and sometimes it's useful to do that. Like if I have everything in a position that I want down, say an arm, I might grab all the joints in that arm and pin it. Although DS will still try to affect the IK down that stream. IK meaning inverse kinematics down that stream. It will still try to some degree. Pinning is not perfect. But and you'll see here, like where I have the feet pinned right now, if I rotate this up, you'll see it tries to keep them stuck in place, but then it has a tolerance. Once it reaches a certain point, they're going to come off anyway. So there's just a certain way, a feel you get for that. Oh, that's kind of cute. Make a little bowing pose there. I kind of like that. Sorry, I just happened onto that while I was just demonstrating that, and I'm like, oh, well, that's a good little pose. We need one of that. I really didn't mean for the Basilisk to end up being potentially kind of playful, but I could totally see this being like something that's like a scary monster that's become playful, and I dig that. So there. It's nice to get to play with my own toys, by the way. That's something I actually don't get to do that near as much as I would like. So to just play with my own toys and make cool images and things. Very little of my time gets spent doing that anymore. Most of my time is spent making the stuff, and then other people get to play with it and render it and do all the fun stuff. I never get to play with my own toys, guys. That's actually one of the things that's made going into 3D printing so satisfying. Is, I actually have my stuff there where I can do things with it, and there's just something satisfying about that. So that's actually a pretty cool pose. I think I'm gonna hold on to that one. So let's do pose preset. Basilisk O2. Thank you, Basilisk. And we'll go to general, and we'll unselect all of these. And there we go. All right. Oh, my allergies killing me this morning, guys. All right, camera's still working. Everything's still working. Cool, cool. All right, popping back over to the chat. Hey, Xavier is in. Nice, nice. My buddy Xavier, he's a local fella here at Moorhead. We play some D&D together. Good to see you on here, man. Heinzie says a glossary would be awesome. Yeah, that's something. I think what I'll do is I'll put one together and then do a video on it so we can have it there on YouTube so you guys can watch it and get the in-person explanation. And then we'll also do. I'll have a text-based version of that I put up on 6s1.com. Let's see. Cool. Sean says it doesn't help that the industry keeps changing what they call stuff. It's a color map. No, it's a diffuse map. No, it's an albedo map. Yeah, I know. There is a technical reason for the names. Like color is such a blanket term that when things started being referred to like early on, it was just this is the color that's on the object. Well, then the shaders that we could use became more advanced, and it's like, well, the color that comes back at the camera isn't necessarily the color of the actual surface. It's the surface combined with different properties that the surface can have once light penetrates it. So then that became kind of a diffuse map. Now that we have physics-based rendering, the actual term in physics for that is albedo. That's why you see albedo used as a term in so much. I don't use that term very often. I refer to it as base color because that is the base coloring of an object before the light interacts with it and bounces back. But I absolutely feel your pain there, dude. These things can get I've been at it so long, it's like the amount of terminology changes are kind of crazy. It's like every couple of years you have to learn some massive new addendum to the language. So, and I can absolutely sympathize with anybody who's coming into this new, because I mean, it's hard sometimes for me to keep up, and I've been at it for 25 26 years in 3D. Good Lord, man. If you're coming at this new right now, I can totally see why most of the new people coming into 3D are hyper specialized instead of looking at saying, I want to be a 3D artist, because that's such a huge, broad thing. A lot of people are like, I want to make clothing. I want to make creatures. I want to do concepting. I want to do rigging. I want to do UVs. Like, it's very, very specialized now. It's kind of weird for me because I come from an era in the stuff when if you did this, you were a generalist. You had to be. There just weren't enough people doing any one thing in this that we could park the jobs out that often. So now it's becoming so granular that to find folks who are 3D generalists is, I mean, there's still a lot of us out there, but it's actually dwindling as the different subsections of what goes into it become more compartmentalized. And, with that, but I understand the utility of that, because as it becomes more compartmentalized, if you're just a texture artist, then all you're worried about is, textures and shaders. So that's all the terminology you got to remember. You're just focused on that. You're not worrying about modeling or rigging or any of that. So I get it. I get that. And as it becomes more and more advanced over time, there's probably going to be a lot more of that. I could see in another 10 years, generalists like me being much more rare. So let's see. Sean says, albedo in physics is a measure of reflectivity. Calling a diffuse map an albedo map makes no sense at all. Well, it does if you think about it, because the albedo map is defining what colors are reflected back to the camera. That's the understanding of it. Say calling a metallic or gloss map an albedo map would make sense. Sort of in the physics sense, but we divide those things up in the 3D space. So I get what you're saying, Sean. But in 3D space, we're dividing those things apart because of a variety of factors of how render engines treat them. How we separate those things out for, good Lord, we could go, I could do a deep dive into that and we'd be on that for like, 3 days. But it makes sense for its application, but if you're not into the application that deep yet, I can understand why it would look a little weird from the physics point of view. So, all right. Well, guys, I appreciate everybody hanging out this morning, and the chat has been pretty interesting. Pretty interesting and rather lively, which is kind of nice. I always dig that. I am about to wrap it up for the morning and head on off to the bazillion other things that I have on my plate to do for today. So I'm just going to wrap this baby by saying thanks for being here. Remember, as always, 6s1.com for the newsletter and to check out new stuff going on with the studio. Like, share, subscribe to this thing. 6s1collectibles.com. I just shared the URL this morning on Facebook. It is still technically in beta. There's only a handful of things up there, but I encourage you guys to share the link. Go there. If you see anything you like, let me know. It is open for purchases via PayPal. I do think there's one thing up there right now that you can buy an STL of. So if you want, you could buy the STL and print that yourself. Otherwise, everything is prints purchased that I will run the print and pull them myself. Let's see. And as always, you can find, if you just plug 6s1 into pretty much anything, or Les Garner into pretty much anything, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so on. You'll get whatever presence we have there. Let's see. And of course, go to Apocalypse Girl on Facebook and check out the book, all that groovy stuff. So until tomorrow, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:05, and then after that, I won't be doing live streams until Fridays. Okay, so Fridays will be live streams. Monday through Thursday, we'll be dropping videos at 9 a.m., and I will be available on Discord to talk about them. But I think that's going to be a much better way. So you guys can still have the interaction with me, but I won't be quite so tied to that stuff, so I can interact through with folks through Discord while still keeping up with all the other stuff that I need to keep up with. So, and I can kind of reclaim some of that morning time. So anyway, I will catch you guys tomorrow morning. Thanks for hanging out. Till then, have a good one.